Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolf, Chris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Well, hey there, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. Alongside the Hall of Famer Chris Carter and Nick Wright, I am Jenna Wolf. And guys, what a weekend we had. Let me just start before you jump in, because you had a day that we did not. I was falling asleep last night. I had the remote in my hand, and I must have just fallen asleep. And all of a sudden, Steph comes running into the bedroom, jumping on top of the bed, screaming something I didn't know. Either our house was on fire or the Vikings somehow came back and won that game. And I took B, and I was right, and it was an unbelievable finish. I am still coming down from that. But you, my friend, you were there in person.
Congratulations.
It was amazing.
I'm so happy.
It was a great weekend. Great football. What does Brumley say? Adult tackle football.
Yeah, adult tackle football.
You can see why football is as popular as it is. I mean, the finishes, the games, the unpredictability of it, and topped off by the Vikings last night and Stephon Diggs with an amazing. If you've seen a lot of stuff in sports history, but you've never been able to be there, and that's what this was for me. It was one of the greatest things. It's definitely one of the greatest things I've seen live happen. And it was like, did I witness that happening?
And you have been a good luck charm for your teams this year. You were at the Penn State-Ohio State game with a huge Ohio State comeback. Yeah. And then you were there on the sidelines pre-game. I know you're going to tell the stories later, but he might have coached up some of the star players in this game. I'm so happy you got to experience that at the game, and then take a nice little trip back here a couple hours ago. So I'm so excited to talk to you about it this morning.
Literally, he landed 8 minutes ago. All right, so let's do that. No better place to start this morning than on the corner where, let's just say, I resided this entire season, Case Keenum. Vikings and Saints in the play that won it for Minnesota. 10 seconds, 61 yards to go, and Case Keenum did that. He somehow found Stephon Diggs on a play called 7 Heaven, turned into a 61-yard touchdown pass, escaped anyone saying otherwise into the end zone to give the Vikings the 29-24 win. Am I doing the excitement to this game justice? Here is Case Keenum after this game.
I can't even explain it, man. I mean, we were definitely in desperation mode. Just tried to give my guy a chance, and Diggsy made a heck of a play. Made a lot of plays today. You got to give our guys credit, man. We fought to the very end, and that's special, man. That's one of the most special times of my life.
They count us out all the time. Nobody think we could do it. This game was over. I don't stop playing till the clock hits 0.
So, CZ, one of the things that we talked a lot about this week was how loud it was going to be there and how crazy the fans were going to be. Absolute pandemonium. I could only imagine you were there on the sideline when this thing ended. Just give us a little taste of the flavor, the atmosphere of what was going on there.
Well, the Vikings for a long, long time, even before they got U.S. Bank Stadium last season with the Metrodome, had always been known as one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. A lot of that manufactured, not authentic noise, but sound, speakers, and the fan. We got great fans, but it was a smaller stadium. This is the first time that U.S. Bank was louder with just fans cheering without any assistance than the Metrodome. Like it was, and you could see at the beginning of the game, even the Saints who played in the old Superdome, now the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, it took them some time to get used to the noise. And that's why they helped the Vikings get off to that fast start. It energized the players. But at the end, the Vikings fans, they stayed true to form, and it really helped the team. They didn't give up. There was not a fan that left their seat, even though there was less than 30 seconds to go. Drew Brees drives the Saints down. They kick it. I mean, of course, that's the way the game's going to end. But as Stephon Diggs said, he's been taught to play until 0, and the Vikings needed every second of it. There's a huge storylines. I mean, you talk about Case Keenum, besides his mother and Jenna Wolf on believing in him.
And maybe 100-year-old Millie at the game who was on the broadcast. Yep. I don't know how many people believed Case could do that.
Yeah, I don't know how Millie survived getting to the game in that weather. I think it was like a high of 5.
I heard it was just
minus
brutal.
7 below, but it sets the stage not only for great championship weeks we have in the AFC and the NFC, but it also sets the stage that 3 weeks from yesterday, someone is going to get crowned Super Bowl champ.
Listen, we're going to spend a ton of today talking about the Vikings. I just want to I want to talk about the Saints on that final play for a moment. I feel so sick for Marcus Williams. I feel like I know what was happening. He sees the ball. If people don't know, like because the Vikings have no timeouts there, all you have to do is tackle them in bounds and the game is over. The Vikings are running everything to the sidelines, hoping to either set up, if they go shorter than that, a better shot Hail Mary. If they complete that and get to the sidelines, you've got a very makeable field goal. And it looked like it was setting up for the Vikings to potentially have their heart broken on a field goal at home again. Like that's when they were driving the ball down the field, that it was maybe going to be a 50-some yarder by Kai Forbath, who had just made a great kick a few minutes earlier. And I feel like Marcus Williams, who had the interception in this game, who had a great rookie season.
Yes.
Just panicked. I think he was worried about a pass interference call.
He definitely was.
Because of pass interference, they stop the clock, and then they can just kick the field goal right there.
Right. This is the biggest problem. When they play two deep safeties in a Hail Mary situation, the safety is a lot wider than he would normally be. Typically, he would be inside the numbers running at an angle to the wide receiver. But because it's a Hail Mary or because they don't have timeouts, he's already wide. So it puts him in bad position on Diggs. But he should be going up and just try to knock the ball down.
Of course.
Now, when he made up his mind that he was going to try to hit him, he realized that he was there a little too early. And then he tried to pull off, because in that situation, you have to realize the defensive coaches are saying there's two things we don't want to happen, all right? Number one is pass interference, and number two is don't rough the quarterback to give him another play. So him being out of position, because in that situation, the safeties are a lot wider. He arrived at the play early, so he didn't want to pass interfere, and in doing that, he wiped out the other defender. I mean, it's like you can't make this kind of stuff up.
I get it. It's pro football. I know he's paid. I know he's at the top of his profession. He's supposed to make any play but the one he made. But, man, I just feel sick for him. Like, he had played so well this year and very well in this game, and in the one moment that, by the way, he will have to have an amazing career that includes winning a championship for this not to be the first paragraph of his football obituary, and that's brutal for him. And he was just trying to avoid the bad play, and instead he made the worst play possible. And Diggs, as you can see, Zimmer said after the game, he wanted Diggs in the moment to go out of bounds. I thought Diggs needed to go out of bounds because I just assumed there was another guy coming.
Right,
Man, that's all we were yelling was go out of bounds. But then I was like, we need a touchdown to cover.
Oh, yeah. But unfortunately, even though, yes, he will be sick to his stomach, and yes, this is what he will be remembered for unless he changes the course of his own history. I mean, this team should not have been down that. This Saints team should not have been down that many and had to play catch up, and they did. And you can point to a number of different ways and times where they could have gotten back into this game, but the Vikings just came out strong and fast. They upped the tempo. They did exactly what we said. They didn't give Case Keenum a chance to ease into his first playoff game. They said, get out there, throw the ball, and he was successful, and they were able to pile up points early.
Right. I think it might be known, too, because I had to think in real time. What if that play doesn't happen? Man, we're talking about Drew Brees, because to me, New Orleans was the most difficult offense and team to figure out here at the rest of the teams that were left. When I was looking at the Vikings, who's their worst matchup? That was with Drew Brees and the double running backs and their ability to be able to throw the ball down the field. But, man, we would have been talking about Michael Thomas and Drew Brees. Man, Drew Brees, and can he be the team that does this? Like, we would have been like, yeah, absolutely. Drew Brees might be the best throwing quarterback left in the tournament. Michael Thomas in the second half against Xavier Rhodes. I mean, he was beastly.
Against a first-team All-Pro.
I mean,
he won that battle repeatedly.
You're talking about the very seldom you're able to see good on good, number one on number one. And there's nothing Xavier Rhodes could do about it. But their ability and Sean Payton's play calling. Oh, my goodness.
How about a wide receiver pass on the biggest play of your season?
3rd and 1.
Biggest play of your season, 3rd and 1 in the playoffs. What are you feeling like in the stadium watching it develop? Because it was open. Like, it was a good play call. It's open. I don't know if it scores,
I felt the Vikings had gotten away with one. You know, because you're talking about huge momentum. They were having a hard time moving the ball on the Vikings all day. But in the third and fourth quarter, Sean Payton, he changed the tempo, and the Vikings were having a hard time like the Saints were in the first half. But this was one of those, moments right there, but tremendous call by Sean Payton. Man, it's a great football game, great chess match going back and forth.
Listen, you mentioned Michael Thomas. As an aside, Michael Thomas broke most of Odell's records for most production through first 2 years. We just don't know his name because doesn't talk, he's not flamboyant. He's just gone out there for 2 straight years in New Orleans, first 2 years in the league, out of
the Ohio State.
There you go. And been highly productive. He won a matchup with arguably the best corner in the league in the second half of that football game. You mentioned Drew Brees. Drew Brees had the worst first quarter of his life. 1 of 6, a pick, and a 0 quarterback rating.
0.
A 0 for the first quarter. Show the half-by-half breakdown of what Drew Brees was. First half, terrible. Second half, perfect. That is a nearly perfect half of football against maybe the best defense in football. At worst, the second best defense in football. So you're absolutely right. Those all would be storylines. But the Vikings, it was like, to me, watching it from afar, and this is why I was so happy for you, bro. The Vikings have had such, from before I was born, bad luck. Like people say luck doesn't, man, luck, maybe it all evens out in the end, but when you only have so many years of football and so many games in a season, it takes a long time for things to even out. And I thought when Forbath went out there for the kick, the first, what could have been the game-winning kick, I was thinking to myself, man, we said Friday, one of these games is going to be decided by a kicker. None of these games have been decided by a kicker yet. Please don't let him miss it. And he makes it. And then for the Saints to come back down and take the lead back, it's like this is how this is going to happen again. And instead, the Vikings become the first team in NFL playoff history to win on a walk-off regulation touchdown. And in one of the greatest finishes to a sporting event I've ever seen, bro.
All right, we're going to talk about this a lot more over the course of the next 3 hours. We want to hear more about what you saw at the game. Next up for the Vikings is the Philadelphia Eagles. CC's heading outside to do the rest of the show there. But at least his kepi will be warm, if you know what I'm talking about. It's good stuff, CC. Coming up.
Heading your way, Philly.
The Steelers, they hosted the Jaguars. What were the odds of the Steelers scoring 42 points and losing this game? 40-1, 50-1, 1,800-1. Clearly, I don't know how gambling works. Nick Wright tweeted something along those lines.
Unbelievable.
After only scoring 10 points last weekend, Blake Bortles and the Jaguars put up 45 points to beat Pittsburgh. So what did they win? They won a shot at the Patriots. As for the Steelers, they're heading home. Here is Big Ben after the game.
Obviously, if you don't win the Super Bowl, you've underachieved, right? Because that's always our goal. It wasn't our day. It wasn't our year.
Those significant moments kind of define you, particularly this time of year, and they made those plays. We made our share of plays in the game, but not those plays in those moments.
I'm just happy to win. I have no animosity towards anybody that's ever said anything. I'm happy to be able to come here and do this with this team. Happy to be able to continue to play for another week. There's a lot of guys sitting at home on the couch watching this that I'm sure wishing they could play. I know in past years I've been. So to continue to have an opportunity to go play is pretty awesome.
We were confident coming in the game. I can't tell you why they were so confident, but that went out the door real quick.
All right, Nick, this was surprising to you. You didn't see this one coming.
I don't think there's anyone in the world that saw the Jags winning like this.
No.
We talked on Friday.
Even, just full disclosure, even Jacksonville, even Jalen Ramsey, even their thoughts of the game, they thought they would win, but it wouldn't be in this fashion. 17-14.
Correct. The total in this game that Vegas set was 41. That's for both teams. Each team hit the total by themselves. It was surprising the Jags won. It was shocking the fashion in which they won. I didn't see, of all the possible machinations, the Steelers scoring 40 points and losing this football game, I didn't see as one of the realistic possibilities. And listen, the Jags are going to talk after this game, and they've earned it. And Jalen Ramsey is one of my favorite young players in the league, and I love his quotes. But the Jags defense has almost nothing to hang its hat on in this game. They won this football game based on their offense. Going into this football game, there had been 10 quarterbacks in NFL history to throw 5 touchdowns in a playoff game. It dates back to Sid Luckman, your guy, Sid Luckman. Yeah. They were 10-0. They're now 10-1 because of Ben Roethlisberger. Big Ben became the first quarterback in playoff history to have a 400-yard, 5-touchdown game in a win or a loss, and they lost that football game. I'm going to say the name that I think was the difference in this football game. Ryan Shazier. I tried to disregard it. I tried to look past it, how different the Steelers' defense looked pre and post his injury. This guy was the defensive player of the year. They then lost him. And in this football game, what I saw was Blake Bortles throwing checkdowns to running backs and tight ends, an area that Ryan Shazier typically patrols, and the Steelers had no answer for it. Leonard Fournette gashing them, T.J. Yeldon gashing them. So I don't know how you can put this on the Steelers' offense. The Jags defense, the Jags offense just beat the brakes off the Steelers' defense, which was shocking to me.
There's a few things that were shocking. The overall physicality of Jacksonville, how much more physical they were in a January playoff game in Pittsburgh. Now, you just don't think those types of things are happening. Now, you have to give Jacksonville credit. Now, they have a great collection of talent. Now, they've been able to get around with Blake Bortles playing mediocre to poor football. He had 14 completions in this game. How are you going to score 40-something points and only have, so how you get to this ending is very improbable. But to me, you say Ryan Shazier, that was the biggest thing. Nick, I've been trying to tell you all year, there's a few things that do matter in football. Chemistry, locker room, morale, how people feel about each other. All right? When you have the night before the game, L. Bell tweeting something about playing New England again. You have his contract. Is he going to be franchised 2 or 3 days before the game? Mike Mitchell, when did he do it? When did he say? When he talk about playing New England? Like all these things I've been telling you all season. The national anthem, to come onto the field, that part. Ben, am I going to play?
You think all that had a factor?
Martavius Bryant. They were never a team together. Now, they're a very, very talented team, but when you get into battles like this, you need everyone to be focused on one goal, and that's advancing. It's not playing New England. New England could have got upset.
But, Cece, explain this to me, though, because aside from Mike Mitchell, all of those distraction things, whether it's Villanueva, Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, L. Bell, Martavis, all of them are offensive players. And the offense was awesome. The offense wasn't affected by any of that. The defense was why they lost that game.
They are a team, Nick, and the offense was bad to start the game.
Yes.
The interceptions and the fumbles.
Yes.
All right? That's how they got down. It wasn't the defense just got down. It was a collection, the offense, the special teams, and as a team. You heard the offensive lineman after the game commenting about his teammates. Yeah, so you think I made that up?
So does that fall on Mike Tomlin?
Of course it does. There's different families that they have different set of rules, and Mike is the head of the household. So who else you going to blame? You going to blame Ben Roethlisberger, AB? Because the players, they either, my former colleague Mike Ditka said, you're either teaching it or you're accepting it. All right? So pick whether corner you want to be on. Either Mike Tomlin is either teaching this or he's allowing it to happen. I've told you all along that was one of the things that's prevented the Steelers from reaching their potential in the last several years.
So I can take that. I can't speak to that. I will take your word for it because you know what you're talking about. What I can speak to on Mike Tomlin is some of his game management decisions late in this football game were indefensibly bad. You go for it. You have 2 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. Down 7. And you go onside instead of kicking away. What you're saying right there is we believe we have a better chance of getting the onside kick than forcing a 3-and-out. After that, you have a 1st and goal from the 5 with 40 seconds left, and you somehow never get back to the onside kick ability because you take so much time.
Because you're consumed about New England. All right? Like they tell you in the street, keep my name out your mouth.
Okay.
Pittsburgh, keep New England's name out your mouth. All right? Don't want to hear it.
All right. Let's take a break. Again, we will talk about this more. But coming up, how embarrassed should the Falcons be after scoring just 10 points?
Anybody know the Vikings won?
What's next for the Eagles?
Anybody?
Who knows? Might be the Vikings.
Oh, we're coming that way, Philadelphia.
All right, moving on to the AFC title game. Oh, Patriots hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's play some compare and contrast. One team has been in this game every year since 2011, won 5 Super Bowls with their current quarterback and has a Hall of Fame head coach. The other team, guaranteed victory. Well, Jalen Ramsey did anyway. Here's Tom Brady addressing Ramsey's comments.
I think what I've learned over a long time is it's how you play and it's not what you say. And I think everyone has different ways of handling things. Coaches do, players do. We do what works for us. Those are other players that work for them. The game's going to be decided by who plays the best, not who hypes the best or speaks the best. He's a really good player. I've watched a ton of film on him. He's got a lot of strengths. And, he's obviously very confident. That's reflected in how he plays. So, I'm more concerned about how he plays as opposed to what he says.
And that has always been the Patriot way, play, don't say. But let's talk about how Tom Brady and his Patriots are going to attack this very, very good Jaguars defense, CC.
It's going to be interesting what they do. Now, I think that A.J. Bouye and Jalen Ramsey will get the ultimate respect by Bill Belichick. So what they'll try to do, they'll try to line up in a lot of bunch formations or clusters where they can set a lot of picks. They're going to be expecting a lot of man-to-man. They know they have the athleticism. If these corners played for New England, man, that's all New England would play because they realize how hard it is for quarterbacks to throw. When you're in zone coverage, guys are like this in space. Man-to-man, there's very little space, and the DB and the wide receiver, it frustrates quarterback, and they don't want to release the ball. So he's going to respect that. Watch Rob Gronkowski try to be the dominant force in the middle because you're better off attacking Jacksonville safeties than you are their corners. And watch the running backs. They will try to get them in space because also they don't want to put that offensive line in the dilemma of dropping back 45 times and having to block Calais Campbell and those other vicious defenders that Jacksonville can send at you. Also in the back of their mind, New England knows that Blake Bortles is the quarterback. All right, so Tom, he will not force a turnover. He knows that they can punt the ball. He's going to have plenty of time, so he won't be rushed. It won't be like Pittsburgh. If he was playing Pittsburgh, Ben Roethlisberger, the triplets, it's a different set of pressure because they can put a lot of points on you. So Tom will be very, very patient. Gronk and the running backs, I believe, will be the featured part of this offense, and I wouldn't be surprised if they negated the running game, New England. I believe the weather's going to be unseasonably a little bit warm, and I believe they're going to throw the ball more than we ever thought going into this game.
All right, before I get to my thoughts on it, it is something we touched on yesterday, but I want to reiterate it today, get your opinion out there on this, because the general conventional wisdom, I know you tell me, stop listening to all these podcasts, stop doing all that.
No, listen to me.
Okay, right.
Stop listening
but the
to them.
general, a lot of the commentary surrounding this game is the Jags are going to put Jalen Ramsey on Gronk. Their best defensive back on the Patriots' best weapon. Jalen's also a big corner. He's 6'1". He's strong. That's their best chance. That was something you told me Monday morning off the air. Throw it away. They can't do that continually throughout the game. Tell them, why can't you just say Jalen, Gronk, one-on-one, Jalen be better?
Because Jalen is more important to the defense playing the cornerback spot that he plays, because then they can play zone or play man, and you don't know that. If you line him up on Gronk and play man-to-man, 50, 60 plays, Tom Brady knows you're in man-to-man. So it's easier to set a pick on him. It's also easier to use Gronk as a decoy because you know exactly what they're doing. And more importantly than Jalen being on Gronk, you know everyone else is in man-to-man. So Tom can pick out the weakest link. It could be a linebacker. It could be a safety. It could be someone else that he would pick on deliberately because you've given him too much information.
And the other thing you had mentioned was if they were to do that, the Pats would just run the ball repeatedly. That you'd be
Gronk would knock him off the field. because he would have to line up on his head if he's guarding a man-to-man, and Gronk would come off and run block him, and like he blocked the guy in Indianapolis where he threw him out the club.
Right, yeah.
That's what he would be doing to Jalen Ramsey a whole bunch in the game.
One of the things we talked about the last couple of weeks with this Patriots team is they want to get out to a fast start, get out there, maybe no huddle, whatever it is. But you're saying that's not as important this time. It is not absolutely necessary for them to get out and do that. They could slow the game down from the start.
I mean, as a team, no one collectively is connected as much as the offense, the defense, and the special teams. So their offensive players, they know what their capability of, even though they're worried about their game plan, Jacksonville's defense, but they've been informed of who's on the other side.
Right.
And it's not to throw shade at Blake Bortles. If it was someone else that didn't have an offense that ran through their quarterback and ran through their tailback, they would do the same thing. So they'll be in sync, realizing it's about field position, it's about getting a lead, it's about forcing Jacksonville to throw the football, and it's about, for New England, getting chunks of yardage on first down. So they stay out of second and long and third and long situations.
The Jags defense, I'll just put a bow on it with this, is coming off its 2 most productive games of the year as far as a quarterback pressure standpoint. You might say they just allowed 42 points. I get that. The only 2 games all year, the only 2 games in the defense in the playoffs, I should say, where you had 20-plus pressures. It was the Jags in round 1 and the Jags last week. So that Jags front is playing very, very well right now. They are going to have to play the best game they have ever played in order to beat the New England Patriots.
All right.
Cece's got a meeting.
Yeah, you got to run.
Secret meeting with the NFL.
I don't know if is it a secret meeting?
No, it's just a meeting with the NFL.
It was secret.
Yeah.
Welcome back to First Things First. Joining us now is Chris Canty.
What up, man?
Never a dull moment on the show. Not even
and sometimes
on the breaks.
the commercial breaks are as exciting as these segments themselves. We will not get into that.
True story.
Let's talk about some football. There are 305,000 people who live in the city of Pittsburgh.
And all of them drink bone broth.
Oh, who brought that up? Certainly not I, said the flag. Of those 305,000, CC, Nick, and Chris Canty, I have no idea how many wanted Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin fired. Didn't matter because the Steelers went in a different direction, letting go of the offensive coordinator, Todd Haley, instead. Haley had served in the role for the past 6 seasons, but had a friction-filled relationship with quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. Chris Canty, how much pressure is on Roethlisberger now that Haley is gone?
I don't know if there's too much pressure on Roethlisberger because you're talking about a Super Bowl winning quarterback in, I guess, the twilight of his career. No matter how he performs over the next couple of seasons, it's not like the Pittsburgh Steelers organization is going to push Ben Roethlisberger out.
Right.
Now, that being said, I don't think it was Todd Haley's fault that this team struggled and didn't get past the Jacksonville Jaguars in the divisional round because they were able to score points. It's just the defensive side of the ball couldn't stop the Jacksonville Jaguars offense from scoring points. So when you look at that, if you want to criticize anyone, you got to criticize Keith Butler, the defensive coordinator. He hasn't had any answers in terms of how his defense can be productive since they've been missing Ryan Shazier out of the lineup. That inside linebacker position is a sore spot for the Steelers right now. I don't know what they do this offseason, but they got to address it, whether it's free agency or the draft, because I don't think you can rely on Ryan Shazier coming back healthy next year.
And given this was the year of injuries. And that's all we talked about was teams either not been able to replace with Aaron Rodgers or teams that were able to find people like Case Keenum. So we shouldn't excuse, because that's part of the game. Ryan Shazier, they should have some type of answer for him on that defense, which would make Todd Haley the scapegoat for this, what was going on in Pittsburgh.
Is that what it was? Because you said we should have been talking about the defense. So why was Todd Haley fired then?
Well, because he didn't have a great relationship with Ben Roethlisberger. There's always been friction ever since he arrived there 6 years ago. And say what you will, Ben Roethlisberger was the guy that threw him under the bus when he talked about that 4th and 1, and he said, well, why didn't your quarterback sneak it? And Roethlisberger had no answer for the media, and he said, I like quarterback sneaks. I don't know why that wasn't a call. Like, that's directly a shot at Todd Haley. Okay. But if you look at the numbers, since Todd Haley got there, I mean, the first 2 years were a little rough because there was a little bit of a learning curve in installing his offense.
They're unbelievable.
But since then, yards ranked per game in the NFL. At his 3rd year, it was number 2 offense in yards, number 7 offense in points. His 4th year, number 3 offense in yards, number 4 offense in points. His 5th year, 7th in yards, 10th in points. And last year's 3rd in yards and 8th in points. Todd Haley is not the problem with the Pittsburgh Steelers offense.
Go ahead, Cece.
And last year it started, just some of it, just to paint a picture for the public. During the draft, they drafted Juju Smith-Schuster, USC, second round, right?
Yep.
Immediately, he gets greeted to one of the great franchises by teammates tweeting that he's been drafted to replace one of the other wide receivers. So this is not Todd Haley's fault. So on draft day, a guy ended up having a remarkable year in Juju Schuster. He's been by Martavius Bryant tweeting that, oh, man, this guy's here to replace one of the other receivers. So there's been a lot of stuff going on in Pittsburgh for a long time. So Todd Haley has had to put up with it. He had to put up with L. Bell's holdout. He had to put up with the Facebook with Antonio Brown last year. He had to put up with Martavius being suspended for a long period of time. So for him to get this type of productivity with all these distractions, like, he has done a great job.
And he's had to put up with, just in the last 15 months, more than a half dozen instances of his quarterback going out of his way to either call out the head coach or the offensive coordinator. Speak for Yourself did a great job of outlining all this on the network the other day. I just want to go through it. So in the last 15 months, Ben Roethlisberger has said, our practices are too physical. We're an undisciplined team. We were outcoached in a playoff game. My coach told me to defer in overtime. That was this year against the Bears. Nobody even asked him about it. He just went out and said it. We should focus on Cincinnati, not New England. I wanted to spike the football. I wasn't allowed to. I wanted to sneak the football. I wasn't allowed to. That's Ben Roethlisberger going out of his way to call out either Todd Haley or Mike Tomlin. And they have to deal with it because he is a Super Bowl champion, because he is one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in football. He never got along with Todd. It was a working relationship and nothing more. And he never – now, Todd has had friction in a lot of relationships. He can be a tough guy to get along with. But one of the greatest receivers ever, Larry Fitzgerald, will say it's the best coach I've ever had. Some of the guys in Kansas City, Keyshawn Johnson liked him, not in Kansas City, but earlier.
Dallas.
With the Jets.
With the Jets. And so players can warm up to him. Roethlisberger never wanted to warm up to him. His contract was coming up, and Roethlisberger said, we want continuity, but didn't want the offensive coordinator back, which is why the quarterback's coach, Roethlisberger's guy, is going to become the offensive coordinator. So Big Ben has brought a lot of this onto himself and onto the franchise. So to answer the question, how much pressure is on Ben Roethlisberger? Hey, man, remember when Bill Parcells said, you want me to cook, but you got to let me shop for the groceries? Well, Big Ben, you want to pick the offensive coordinator, essentially. So, okay, you mentioned top 10 each of the last 4 years in yards and points. You better stay there.
Yeah, I don't believe Ben picked the offensive coordinator. It's easy to make that type of distinction because this goes back before Todd Haley. Who was offense coordinator before Todd Haley got there?
Bruce Arians.
Bruce Arians. How did that end? It ended the same way. So this is not new. And I'm just going to tell you, I know the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Ben's not going to be there enough that they would give Ben the ability. I believe that the quarterback coach is the most competent to be able to take over. So I wouldn't like to put that out there that this is Ben's selection as far as the offensive coordinator. Because I know Mike Tomlin and Pittsburgh and their front office and how they've gotten coaches. They don't let the players have any type of input in that. So I believe they will get the right person. They've had the right person. They had Bruce Arians. He went on to Indianapolis and then on to a head coaching job in Arizona, but it came from what he created in Pittsburgh.
Well, Cece, you mentioned they're not going to let the coaches pick the guys. Would you agree, though? I'm sorry. The players pick the coaches. My mistake. Would you agree, though, that if Roethlisberger had a better relationship with Haley, Haley would still be there? Because the production was clearly there.
Well, I just believe there's more things going on in that locker room than we know.
But isn't that
And I don't like to draw conclusions that I can't prove.
Okay.
Todd Haley's responsibility to make sure the offense runs, that plays are called, that Ben Roethlisberger plays great. All the other, the tweeting, the distractions, the Facebook, the talking about the contracts, that falls under Mike Tomlin's umbrella. That's not up for Todd Haley. Offensive coordinators aren't in charge of disciplining the locker room. I would say that's clearly under Mike Tomlin's scope of responsibility. That being said, this is a team that had, 13 wins? Ben Roethlisberger played great, including that last game. He had almost 500 yards or something. So shy of the relationship between Ben Roethlisberger and Todd Haley, What was the reasoning for them not renewing his contract?
Well, I can only point to the friction between Big Ben and Todd Haley. I can't point to anything else definitively. Now, you did have the distraction that Todd Haley got into an altercation at a bar in Pittsburgh a few weeks ago before the start of the playoffs, but I don't think that had any influence in terms of the decision that was made by the organization. Now, in terms of Big Ben having say on who the next offensive coordinator is, I don't think that he's handpicking the quarterback's coach to be the next OC, because realistically, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, how many years do you have of Ben Roethlisberger left? You're talking about 2 or 3 seasons before you got to think about trying to get somebody else in there to be your starting quarterback. So this is the twilight of his career. Right. Are you still trying to get a championship? Yeah, because you have Antonio Brown, one of the best wide receivers, if not the best wide receiver in the National Football League. You got Lev Bell, the best running back in the National Football League, one of the best offensive lines in place in the National Football League. You want to try to take advantage of that while you still have it. But ultimately, I'm not making decisions for the foreseeable future just based on what Ben Roethlisberger wants.
And a lot of times you overreact. People will say, yes, because they got stopped on a 4th and 1, a quarterback sneak would have been better. But pitching the ball to Le'Veon Bell on a toss sweep on 4th and 1 is not a worse option than Ben Roethlisberger going a quarterback sneak. He is a great football player. It was not blocked well. That's the reason why they didn't get it. And for them to be able just to say, oh, the question is, is he under more pressure? Man, Ben has been through some tremendous scandals in Pittsburgh, and they have supported him. Off the field, the scandal, as far as the sexual harassment, they supported him. Riding a motorcycle without a helmet, they supported him. And a number of other things, they have supported him. So as far as is there pressure on Ben Roethlisberger? No, Ben is a made man in Pittsburgh.
The new movie 12 Strong, starring, are you coughing? Wow,
I'm looking forward to it. You bring some tickets?
Chris Hemsworth and Rob Riggle. And look who's joining us now. One Rob Riggle, who I didn't realize you were actually an active member of the Marine Corps at one point.
I did 23 years in the Marine Corps.
So just a small stint. You just wanted to get a little taste of it. Is that what drew you to this movie, or to wanting to jump on board this project?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that, but also the story is one of the most fascinating stories in military history. If you look into it, the book Horse Soldiers is what the movie's based on, but it was a classified story for a long time. Now it's been declassified, and finally, 17 years later, they're getting to tell their story. The interesting thing, I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. So when I went over, this story takes place in October of 2001. I went over and joined this unit in November of 2001. And I worked for Lieutenant Colonel Max Bowers, who I am now playing in the movie. So I'm playing my old boss in the movie.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
So if people people should see the movie, but just if people don't know the story, I mean, the tagline is they watched in terror on September 11th, they volunteered to fight on September 12th. But since you experienced it firsthand and made the movie, can you just give us a little version of what was actually going on here, what these guys were trained or asked to do in this circumstance?
Well, basically what happened is right after 9/11, we were looking to figure out, one, who did it, and how we were going to respond to it. When we finally, we figured out obviously pretty quickly that it was Al Qaeda, and then that they were being harbored and protected by the Taliban in Afghanistan. So the Northern Alliance, who was already in Afghanistan and currently fighting the Taliban, their leader Mossad was assassinated on September 9th as payment to the Taliban. So the Al Qaeda assassinated this guy on September 9th to, as payback to the Taliban so they could stay in Afghanistan. And it really shook the Northern Alliance because he was the thing holding it together. Then they attacked us on the 11th, and then we responded. We went in, these 12 Special Forces soldiers went in, joined the Northern Alliance, and took the fight to the Taliban and Al Qaeda. They were the first ones in, first ones hooking and jabbing in October.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Great story.
We're going to make a hard turn to football just because there's no
natural segue.
It's just an easy transition to go from one to the other. And we've been talking obviously about the championship games all week, and now we're getting ready. Let's start with the NFC. 2 big-time quarterbacks going up against each other with tons of experience in this one, head to head. How do you see this battle between?
They're in the same class, weren't they? The class of whatever the.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, they came in the league at the same time. Is what
they
I'm
did.
saying.
So they have history. history.
So it's kind of cool. I mean, it worked out. It's amazing how things work out. You just never know how things are going to work out.
It's adorable. It's adorable. Case Keenum and Nick Foles. That sort of just falls off the tongue.
Sure.
Tell me about this little matchup between the two. What do you think?
Look, I think it's going to be awesome. I think Minnesota, they had such an unbelievable high. I hope they emotionally have calmed down and got their focus back. And because when you go through something like that, I think it takes a while to regroup a little bit, maybe mentally, emotionally, all that stuff. And don't underestimate the Eagles. Like look, everybody's complaining about Foles or whatever. The Falcons were red hot, in my opinion, red hot, and they shut them down. So that Eagles defense is real, and put it all together, I think we're going to have a great game.
You're a huge football fan. You've been involved with Fox for a long time, and the big show on Sunday. Where were you, and what was your reaction to the Minneapolis Miracle?
I was in my hotel room, and I was really bummed out that I was alone because I was screaming and yelling, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So I wanted someone there to acknowledge what had just happened. And
so you ordered room service, right?
Yeah, so I got the waiter.
Come here, guys.
Man. Right. But I did. I wanted to acknowledge it. So I did what everybody in this world does. I tweeted out "Oh my God, Vikings!" I think is what I tweeted, and that was it. But and then I called my son. He's back home, so I called him and I was like, "Did you see? Did you see?"
Yeah.
He didn't. So I felt bad because he was like, no, I was shooting hoops.
What happened? Story dropped off a little bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned the emotional high. So the one thing that's really interesting about this game, so CeCe was at the game, he was able to be in the locker room right after. And CeCe's described that while in the locker room, celebration amidst, once Mike Zimmer acknowledges the team, acknowledges the moment, he started going down the schedule for Monday. Like, listen, practice squad guys, you show up at 7:30. Yeah. These guys, you show up at 8, just to try to refocus everyone.
Yeah, definitely refocus, level set. Everyone, do you guys realize we just witnessed a miracle? That's what he said. They said the Lord's Prayer, practice squad squares, 8 o'clock, weightlifting, 8:30, team meeting at 9.
Good.
So the chance of recovering.
I think that's the absolute right thing to do. I think that's the smartest thing you can do. You come off an emotional high like that, it is so hard to reset and regroup and refocus. And I think that's right. You have to acknowledge it. You can't blow it off. Celebrate it, acknowledge it, but then, you got to get your head screwed back on.
On the other side of the bracket, there's one team I think everyone expected to be there in the Pats. Then another team, not a lot of people expected to be there in the Jags. I think everyone was looking forward to Pats Steelers too. The Jags threw that off in a style that I don't think anyone saw coming, winning the game 45-42. A lot of ways the Jags could win that game, allowing the
over-under was 42.
Right, both teams hit the over by themselves essentially. It was, right, it was so. What up, Steve?
He's not the person to remind what the over was. Okay? I'm just going to tell you.
I'm not yet over.
One of Kansas City's finest.
Yeah, the fact that I bet the under in a game where both teams individually hit the over. Wasn't my finest gambling moment in a year of bad gambling moments. But that's neither here nor there, CC. Right. So, but now we have what is a really interesting matchup because you have the best defense in football against the best team of the last 20 years, the dynasty in the NFL. People are going to focus on the Brady and Bortles part of it. I'm really excited. We've talked about see the Pats offense match up with the Jags defense. Curious your thoughts on it.
I don't know. Really, this one to me, by all accounts, put it on paper, take it to a bar discussion, take it anywhere around, everybody's going to say Pats, 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 because they are this juggernaut of football power. Let's face it, they are. If they get into this, that's what Brady's going to play in his 8th Super Bowl. That's crazy.
Yes.
That's just insanity. So, you do have to acknowledge the dynasty and the powerhouse that the Pats have been. But the Jaguars didn't just walk into this. They didn't just accidentally show up to the AFC Championship. They're there for a reason. And look, as a football fan who doesn't have a dog in that fight, I just want a good game. And I think we're going to get one. I know
you didn't want to talk about the quarterbacks. I do. The law firm, obviously, of Keenum, Bortles, and Foles, they were zygotes, basically, when Tom Brady started playing football. We've been talking this whole season how long this guy has and what he could do. And is this it, or can he, like he wants to play for another 45 years? What do you think about Tom Brady's longevity in this?
He apparently can do whatever he wants.
Easily, right?
Yeah. Every time I start to, because I was at the Super Bowl last year, and I saw that miracle happen, right? And I was like, if he doesn't walk out at 40 on top with the greatest game ever played, I think that would be silly.
Yeah.
But then he came back, and I was like, okay. And then I said, I think that was a mistake because clearly they probably won't even make the playoffs. Well, now he's playing the AFC Championship game, and he's got a pretty good shot at making the Super Bowl again. So what do I know? I clearly know nothing, and he can do whatever he wants.
Rob, Blake Bortles, you tell a bunch of jokes. Blake Bortles is the punchline of a lot of jokes in the National Football. Is this the game that he removes that title as the punchline of the NFL?
It could be, yeah. I mean, if he shows up and does everything he's supposed to.
You're crying about it.
I am. It's making me emotional. This could be Bortles' big moment.
This is it.
That's my quarterback.
I've waited so long.
Is Rob still emotional like I am that somehow the Kansas City Chiefs want to
These are Chiefs tears.
I mean,
they haven't stopped. They haven't stopped.
Been suffering with this guy.
People don't know Rob's from the same place I am. He's from
That's
Kansas City. He grew up on the Kansas side of the state. I grew up on the Missouri side of the state. But regardless, did you believe in them this? Because I got fooled again.
Well, those first 5 games, I was pretty hard to live with and be around. Then, of course, I was brought back to earth. And then we got hot again, and I thought, this is great. We're peaking at the right time. You know, here we go.
Hey. And then the first half of the playoff game, it felt like that.
I don't know what it is. Arrowhead is such an advantage, but we haven't won a playoff game at Arrowhead since Montana was our quarterback.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. He's really upset about it.
I mean, it's just no. So I just
they're killing me, man.
That's the real devastation of it all, because you felt like they felt like the AFC. There were some weak points this year.
I always. That's part of being a fan. That's fandom. I am always for the Chiefs. I'm always on board with the Chiefs. Their fate is my fate. I have to live with it. But yeah, they're killing me.
I try to be the resident funny person on this show. Otherwise, things get just a little serious. So I very much appreciate and love what you do every Sunday. Before we get back.
But what if she says next is not funny? Don't be concerned.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not trying to be funny. When one doesn't try to be funny, one is funny or one is not funny.
Just a natural
thing.
You and Rob share.
How much do you enjoy the stuff that you get to do on Sundays? We love watching you.
I thank you, and I appreciate that. I love to do it. It's a kind of a narrow lane. I got about 1:45.
Maybe.
Sometimes.
Hey,
and sometimes if it's a one-game thing, like the Thanksgiving, I got 30 seconds.
Right.
And I got to make my picks, and I got to be G-rated. Not even PG, G-rated.
They're really hamstringing you there.
It's the NFL, so I don't want to upset them.
Okay. Right.
Otherwise, Fox gets slapped, and then Fox slaps me.
Yep.
Right. So, it's a narrow lane with which to do comedy, and every week we got to come up with a sketch, So we try our best. Yeah.
Do you have one this year that you think back on that you're like, that's the favorite thing we've done?
We do song parodies a lot.
Yeah.
And we did a Thanksgiving one that was kind of fun, I thought.
They did a song parody without you at the Upfronts this year that involved Terry and Howie rapping.
Yes.
You would have been very, very much appreciated.
I think mercifully I was filming a movie.
I was just going to say, you're probably lucky and happy that you weren't there. Welcome back to First Things First. If it weren't for the unreal ending to the Vikings-Saints game, the play we might all still be talking about would be that catch right there, made by Adam Thielen. And would you look at this? Who got up early to join us this morning on our show? Adam Thielen. Adam!
Yes.
Applause all around. First of all, congratulations. Thank you so much for being with us on the show this morning. How you feeling today?
Pretty good. I can't complain. Obviously, we're ready to get back to work, and we're sick of seeing the Minnesota Miracle. We're ready to get back to Philadelphia.
Well, great news, because we're going to talk about it for yet a little bit longer. So our guy CC was at the game. He was on the field. He came back. He described to us in vivid detail what was going on. What he wasn't was in uniform in that play when that actually happened. So if you would just enlighten us one more time at least. What was your reaction being on the field and watching that all unfold?
Well, I couldn't move. I couldn't believe it. I was in shock. I was pretty much in the Saints bench at the time, so they couldn't move. I couldn't move, and it was unbelievable. I still can't even really believe it, but I'm ready to get back on the field again.
So I'm going to follow up with one more about that. When you see it happen, or when the play's drawn up, I imagine it's catch it quick, get out of bounds, try to get a field goal. Did you think there was any chance at a touchdown on that play when you guys came out of the huddle?
No, not when we were coming out of the huddle. Case told us before we lined up, he said, hey, somebody's going to get a chance here. I'm going to give somebody a chance and make a play and get out of bounds. And when I saw the ball in the air, though, was when I really, felt like we had a chance to actually score because there was nobody behind Diggs. And the way that the safety missed him, I was just hoping he stayed in bounds and stayed on his feet to score because it was pretty unbelievable. There was nobody behind him to have that guy's back.
The one thing that we felt a little bit bad about as fans watching the game was that we weren't in the locker room to just get a sense of what that celebration felt like. So can you just describe the moments afterwards when you all finally got in there, when the euphoria was just starting to settle in and kind of whirl its way up?
Yeah, I mean, to put it in perspective, I guess, all the work we put in since OTAs, training camp, all the practices through the season, all the games in the season to actually have this opportunity. I think it all kind of just came out in the locker room like, wow, the work is paying off. The GMs, the coaches, everybody's hugging each other, high-fiving, and just saying what just happened because it all happened so fast. We really just kind of were in shock still, like I said before. But, everybody just the emotions came out. And now to have this opportunity this week, we really got to take advantage of it because what happened last week doesn't mean anything if we don't take care of business this week.
After looking at the tape, I know Philadelphia, they're very, very impressive, Adam, from a defensive standpoint. They got a rotation, 7 defensive linemen going out. They play some man-to-man coverage on the outside, also play some zone. What do you look for as far as this matchup with this Vikings offense going against this very, very good Philadelphia Eagles defense?
Yeah, well, obviously, for me, I really focus in on the secondary. And the one thing that pops out on tape with this secondary is there's not a whole lot of times that receivers are catching the ball in space. There's a lot of contested catches, which is a lot of credit to them. It means that they're covering guys extremely well. They're extremely well coached. They're in the right spots because, like I said, there's very few times I've seen on film where guys are catching it wide open and being able to run after the catch and things like that. So we're gonna have to really come with a really good game plan and making sure that we're doing the little things to gain separation.
Adam, you mentioned contested catches, that there's not a lot of wide open windows. One thing you and your counterpart, Stephon Diggs, have been near the top of the NFL this year is those contested catches. Now, those don't happen if the quarterback throwing the ball doesn't trust you guys to make those plays. How important for your guys' success has been the symbiosis, if you will, between Case trusting you guys to go up and making a play and you guys not letting him down by going up and completing those plays?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it means a lot for Case to have trust in us, and I think that starts with practice. I think Diggs and I and all of us as receivers, skill position guys, we kind of pride ourselves on making those plays in practice so we can gain that trust in a game. And it's kind of funny because in the game, actually, Case came up to me after one of the third down catches I had, and he said, man, I didn't even see you. I just trusted you were going to get open, which is pretty cool as a receiver to hear because that's what you want. You want to be given that opportunity. Every time you run a route, you run it to get open, and you want the ball in your hands. So when the quarterback has trust like that, when he can't even see you and he's throwing the ball and expecting you to make a play, it's pretty cool.
Adam, I would imagine, and I've covered Super Bowl week many times, or the conference titles weeks, and I know that the question you probably get asked more than anything is about Case Keenum, and there's a lot of media surrounding, a lot of articles and whatnot surrounding Case Keenum and Nick Foles in this one. So I have to ask you this. Not many people were on the Case Keenum bandwagon like you guys were as a team early on in this season. And you guys were out there saying, this is our guy, this is our guy. And he did nothing but go in there and help you guys win week to week. He has got you into the NFC Championship game right now. And I just have to ask how impressed you were with the way Case Keenum played in that playoff game last week and what you're looking forward to out of him this week.
Yeah, I think every week, me personally and as a team, I think we're more impressed each week. It's it's impressive what he's been able to do this season, stepping in for Sam and trying to be a leader and taking over this offense. And we're going to need him to keep doing those things, which we can completely trust him to do that because of the way he prepares. I mean, there's nobody. I know it's cliche to say about a quarterback that he's the first one in here and the last one out and. He prepares like nobody else, but but it's the truth. This guy, I've never seen somebody memorize a game plan before the week even started. And it's just really impressive. And those are the things that make him successful. People think that, we just show up on Sundays and start slinging the ball around, but they don't really see what he does throughout the week.
So you're impressed with Case as far as that you don't see that type of understanding and volume of the offense. Has that helped you guys from the offensive coordinator standpoint? He's seen how Case has played. He's got confidence in Case, and he has the whole volume of offense. All coordinators say, we're going with the backup. We're going to run the same offense. But the Vikings actually are running the whole volume of offense based on what you're telling us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's allowed Coach Shermer to really do what he does. I think sometimes, as coordinators, they can get kind of pigeonholed and into certain things with having to do play a backup and things like that. But like I said, Case has done such a good job of just kind of making this offense his own. And I think he said that early on this season. He said, this is my offense now, and I'm going to make it my own and try to get it to the point where I can start making checks at the line and the coaches trust me to really open it up. And like I said, that only helps the offensive coordinator and us as players, because that gives us the ability to do a lot of things and make a lot of things look the same and be able to disguise things.
This was your first career divisional round playoff game. You've got Chris Carter, John Randall, a bunch of other all-time Vikings greats on the sidelines. Before the game, you can really feel the importance of it. Can you tell us what that was like pregame? And if you would, because CC, he won't tell me, what did he say to you after the game? Spill it. I'll mute his mic. Just tell us both those things, please.
No, it was awesome, obviously, to see CC before the game, and after the game, it was a cool moment. Got to get a picture with my guy, and he just said he was proud of us, and us as receivers, even Diggs, not being from Minnesota, he looked up to him and the plays that he was able to make, and those are the guys that made us want to play this game and play at a high level. So it was really cool to see all those guys there, the alumni. The fans, the atmosphere that place had was just unbelievable, and everything leading up to that week with I think there was every middle school and elementary school did a Skol chant and sent it to us. So we felt the energy from around Minnesota, that's for sure.
Adam, no extra pressure, but it's very, very rare that we hear of a story like yours. No scholarship opportunities, not invited to the combine. As a little boy, you had a lot of dreams. But a lot of those dreams included playing for the team that potentially you get a chance to go to the Super Bowl. Adam, be honest with me. What would it personally mean for you? So many people have given up on you. People said you were too small. You shouldn't play offense. All those things. To be 60 minutes from making the Vikings, potentially get the team to a point where they've never ever won the Super Bowl before. Inside as a little kid, what's it feel like?
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable to think about that. I think for me, honestly, just all the work I put in, all the work that this team has put in, you look back to how long ago OTAs seems and training camp and things like that. And like I said, just all that work that you put in, that's what makes it even more special and what makes it even more, even makes it a bigger game, because you don't put all that work in and you don't do all those things. You don't go through high school and try to get into college and try to make it in the NFL. You don't do all those things to not want to win a Super Bowl. So, that's the main goal. That's the thing you always look for every season. You start the new season, and that's what you want to do. So obviously we know this is a big game and something that we've been working for and striving for a long time. So this opportunity doesn't come very often either. So we're going to try to make sure that we take advantage of that.
Well, Adam, we know you do still have more work to be done. It is 7:30 a.m. where you are. You have a full day and a couple more days until this game. We wish you the best of luck, and we thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you so much, Adam. Good luck, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
This time Monday morning, we're going to know who's in the Super Bowl.
Yes, we will.
All year long, we've talked about it.
Yes.
It's our last show we do without knowing it. I'm so excited.
This is what we look like without having Super Bowl knowledge.
Exactly right. And this is what Chris looks like after being poisoned by his co-host.
Oh, right. Okay.
We will get to that at some point in these 3 hours. if Jenna Wolf offers you candy or food product, make sure you check out the details, country of origin, and expiration date.
Sometimes your intelligence backfires, okay?
This isn't one of them.
He's here and he's alive. You are here and you alive. And really, at the end of the day, when the bar is that low, that's all that matters.
My stomach hurts like Tom Brady's hand.
Speaking of the hand of Tom Brady, if you are the Patriots quarterback and you bang your hand in practice days before the AFC title game, it's not that big a deal. If you're limited in practice on Wednesday as a result, kind of a big deal. If you miss practice Thursday and the line starts to move towards Jacksonville's favor, more of a big deal. Good thing they've got a backup quarterback in case of emergency. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Cece, should we be concerned now that Tom Brady has missed practice Thursday and was limited on Wednesday?
I'm a big practice guy. Yeah. And anytime that I see a guy's practicing, sometimes it's warranted. Sometimes the coach is going to give players certain time. There's bumps and bruises, especially on Wednesday. Coaches are a little more lenient. Training staff is a little more lenient. But when we get to this time of the year, because timing is so crucial, and being with your teammates on the field, all guys who can practice, they practice as much as their body allows them to. Tom Brady is a workout fanatic. He loves watching film. He loves being on the practice field with his teammates. So it's easier for me to jump to a conclusion with Tom because I've seen this. Other guys, I wouldn't be as concerned about. But Tom, I know he wants to get every snap. Tom even wants to take the kneel down at the end of games. So I know it's very important. If he gets dinged on a Wednesday practice and then he misses part or most of the Thursday practice, of course I'm going to be concerned because Wednesday and Thursday is where they do most of the installation and most of the running. On Friday, it's just more maintenance, throwing out some things. They don't throw the ball as much. Now, Tom has more experience than anyone that's ever played this game. Now, he's going to need it, especially if he's banged up. But if he's banged up, watch for New England to change their game plan. Either watch for him try to throw the ball really short, either sideways, horizontally compared to vertically, and watch for him to try to run the ball because even though Tom's hand might be banged up, they know they're playing against Blake Bortles. So they're going to have a game plan that I believe is going to reflect that Tom's hand was injured in practice, and we're going to see a very, very different game plan, I think, come Sunday by Tom Brady and the Patriots.
Before I give my opinion on this, I just want to follow up with a question for you on that. How hard is it to change the game plan Thursday?
It's not that hard for New England.
Okay.
Because they have a variance of game plans going in. Like they might have come out and started throwing the ball, but saying we're going to get the lead, then eventually we're going to run the ball. And they are more game-specific, injury-specific. You know, if they don't have Gronk, what they're going to do. If they don't have a James White. So it's easier for them to adjust than other teams. So that right there makes you have less concern because it's New England.
All right, so I'm the resident gambling guy on the show. Vegas did take note of this. Vegas took note of this. The line moved more from Wednesday to Thursday than the line would have moved if Rob Gronkowski was ruled out of the game.
Wow.
The line moved 1.5 points, 2 points in some spots. Gronk's worth between 1 point and 1.5 points. So this was a significant line move from the Pats to 9.5 point favorites.
And tell people what that means. That's the people are shifting where they're betting.
All of a sudden, a lot of money came in on Jacksonville. Now, maybe that was just Joe Public who saw our show, saw Skip and Shannon, said, oh, my God, Brady hurt his hand. It might be broken. Let me bet a bunch of money on the Jags. Or maybe it's sharp bettors. Maybe it's people with information saying, oh, there's now value on the Jaguars. But the line moving that much with one thing changing, to me, makes it noteworthy. Brady then missing practice. So I knew the line moved before I knew Brady missed practice. Brady then missing practice compounds it. But I also have to say, the Pats, if Brady had to play left-handed, then this quarterback matchup's a draw because they're up against Blake Bortles. This game's in Gillette. The Jags are coming off consecutive, very difficult playoff games, very different playoff games. The first one was a slugfest 10-3. The second one, a high-scoring duel. The Patriots, meanwhile, had a week off and then blew out the Titans. This is if you thought the Pats were going to win prior to this, to me, this is not reason to change your opinion. The Pats, in my eyes, are still heavy favorites going into this football game because of the experience, because of where the game is, and because no one thinks Brady's not going to play. No one thinks Brady's going to be out of the football game, just maybe not quite as effective as you would have hoped he could be.
Question for you. Just if we talk about him changing the game plan, what does it mean for the way, and I don't know this, the way you grip the football? Because you throw, right, with your fingertips. So what is the fact that your thumb is injured? Does that affect the distance he can throw, the velocity that he can throw?
Right. They haven't been specific as far as is it the hand, is it a thumb, or a finger? If it's thumb, which a lot of quarterbacks hurt their thumbs more so when they're throwing because they release, their thumb goes down, and it typically hits someone's helmet. So it's typically some type of bone bruise. Hope it's not the same bruise as Sam Bradford, because enough he's going to lose his hand. But it stings for a couple days, and I could see from a caution standpoint, also it makes sense why they had an X-ray. All right, if there was some immediate swelling, immediately get an X-ray at the facility to make sure that you know that it's not broken. And then the next day, you're going to keep it compressed to make sure that the swelling and try to get it to die down before game day. New England is very, very fortunate. It's going to be unseasonably warm this weekend, and that is going to help. If it had been the normal in the 20s, wind chill in the teens, that would affect a quarterback's hand more so. And anytime you see Tom Brady wearing a glove, because he does not like to wear a glove, that's an alarm, too, right there, that something is a little bit different than what we're used to seeing.
Or that they want to cover up whatever it is and not let anyone see. And I know you think Mother Nature, as well as the refs and everyone else, is rooting for the Patriots.
Well,
so there you go, Nick.
I don't know who's rooting for the Pats, but I do know this. We thought it being unseasonably warm 48 hours ago, that was good for the Jags.
Right.
That all of a sudden the Jags aren't going to have to deal with the elements. It's interesting now with this, it could tilt it to where the Patriots are happy about this. I can't hear this, though, and not think about what was the biggest story of the Patriots' regular season, which is trading Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, I understand they have to deal with where they're at right now. I understand Brian Hoyer's their backup quarterback. He has experience in the system. But this is a team that doesn't carry three quarterbacks, that had, without question, going into this year, the best quarterback situation in the league's best backup quarterback, and a third stringer who has shown he can start games and win games for multiple teams in this league. To go from that to be in the AFC Championship game where Brian Hoyer who hasn't taken a meaningful snap for the Patriots in years, where Brian Hoyer's your backup quarterback, it does make me think about not only that, the article about why Garoppolo was traded, the timing where he was traded, that entire circumstance.
CeCe, what would have to happen for Brian Hoyer to be playing football on Sunday?
Oh, a disaster. They didn't send something from North Korea and it's then hit us if he gets in the game. I mean, it's...
So he's going to play with his thumb like this. I mean, they have to be. Could he be playing and they're losing so badly they pull him?
Let's not forget, Tom Brady is a football player. All right, he's going to be out there. That's his team. All right, it's his legacy at stake. All right, let's not get carried away. If he can't play, if he can't grip the football, Bill and them are going to make the best decision for the football team, just like they do anything else. Tom Brady will get a chance to play. Now, can Jacksonville take advantage of the injury? And he's going to be very fortunate because it's a lot easier to grip the football when it's above freezing, which it's going to be on Sunday.
Look, I'm no drama queen, but Patriots backup quarterback Brian Hoyer practiced in Brady's place because of that injured hand. And at last check, Jimmy Garoppolo is enjoying his offseason. New England is favored by more than a touchdown in this one. So what chance do the Jags have here? Head coach Doug Marrone got some interesting advice on this.
Want to beat the Patriots? Here's how. Advice from your number one fan is the Bulls first grade. That's the one thing I will say about this week. It's kind of thrown me off. I find it hard to believe how so many people have an opinion on how to beat the New England Patriots and no one's really have done that.
So give it up to the first grade class at Bulls School, who gave Marrone a whole packet with advice to taking down the Pats.
That's all.
CeCe, advice from grade schoolers aside, and it's adorable, really. I'm surprised more schools haven't done this in and around the Jacksonville area. What is the key to this matchup?
Well, they haven't been in the championship game since '99. So the kids have gone on to college.
So the last kids to write those letters were the parents of the kids writing these letters.
Right.
I mean, Doug Marrone is right that it is hard to come up with a calculated, educated, realistic plan to beat New England, especially in playoff games in Foxborough. But the one thing that Jacksonville has on its side, and I know Doug Marrone is preaching this to Jacksonville. There's been 4 times you had this type of matchup where you had the NFL's leading passer against the number 1 pass defense it's happened since 1990. This will be the 4th time. If Doug Marrone, if he's on the right side of history, they will be 4-0 after this game because the number 1 defense has shut down the number 1 passer in the 3 previous times. They're 3-0. So the path to victory is this defense. Defense wins championships. Our boy Ray Lewis talks about that's what got him 2 championships. Jacksonville's path to victory is by shutting down Tom, making them one-dimensional, which they might be if he has a serious hand injury, and creating turnovers. That's the only way you're going to be able to beat New England, and that's especially the only way that you're going to be able to beat them in Foxborough.
So I know everyone's going to focus on strength versus strength. Patriots offense against Jags defense. It's the most interesting matchup. It involves Tom Brady. It involves all the great characters and players on the Jags defense. I want to flip it around just for a moment because here's what we know about the Patriots offense. They're getting to 20 points. They get to 20 over the last 3 years in games that Brady's played all the way through. They've been held under 19 twice.
In 3 years.
In the last 3 years, it's happened twice, held under 19. Once a 16-3 win against Denver, where they really took their foot off the gas last year. They probably could have scored more. And one, a 20-18 loss to Denver in the AFC Championship game a couple years ago. So Denver's the only team that's held Tom Brady under 19 points in the last 3 seasons. So the reason I mention that is the Jags defense can play great. Offense still got to get to 20. Or the team as a whole still has to get to 20. I don't think you can hold this Patriots. I don't think you can beat this Patriots team no matter how good your defense is 13-6. Remember when Ray was out here and I asked him, how many points did you guys feel like you guys needed? And he said 3. We only needed 3. And while that seemed hyperbolic, that team only allowed 10 points per game. This Jags defense, best defense in the NFL, they still allow 16 points per game. That's on league average. The Patriots will get to their 20. So how can the Jags get to that point total? To me, that is almost the underrated key of this football game, and I don't see them being able to do that unless Leonard Fournette has a massive football game.
They can do it with the defense. The defense could create turnovers. They could score a touchdown. They could put them in field goal range with a field goal. I think one of the major differences is Pittsburgh's defense was not great in the red zone. They did not slow down Jacksonville. I believe New England's defense, they will tighten up. Jacksonville might get some yards on them, but they are exceptional in the red zone. So those trips, if Jacksonville has one less trip in the red zone yesterday where they converted to a touchdown, they lose to Pittsburgh. Right? But when they got into the red zone, they got touchdowns. And that was a huge part to the game because at the end, that was a big difference. So New England, people that say they don't like their defense, they give up a lot of yards. Man, it's points. How many points will they be able to negate one from the red zone?
Who's had the most success against the Patriots in the Super Bowl in the last couple of years?
The Giants.
The Giants and Tom Coughlin. How much of this week is going to be about Doug Marrone knocking on Tom Coughlin's door? And I understand Blake Bortles is no Eli Manning, but how much is going to be like, okay, you game planned against Tom Brady and a good portion of that offense?
I want to make a point on that because I've heard so many people bring up that exact point. The Giants, what's the Giants' methodology? What was the Broncos' methodology? It seems to me their methodology of beating the Patriots is... It's nothing special about the Patriots or those teams. It's about the personnel they had. Because what's their methodology? Get to the quarterback without having to send extra guys. Get to the quarterback with a 4-man rush. Cece, tell me if I'm wrong. Isn't that every team's hope? Isn't that every game plan?
But the Giants made it work, and everyone goes in trying to do that.
Every team can't do that.
Agreed.
Every team does not have Pro Bowl corners. Every team does not have the type of rushers that they had that compile the type of sacks. So, no, they want to, I mean, they say they want to get pressure, but they know they got to blitz to get pressure. So, no, every team's job is not to say, we're going to rush forward today because they know they can't get there.
Go ahead, Jenna.
I was going to say, then how did the Giants figure out a way to do it?
They had the guys. They had the personnel, which is why...
The NASCAR package.
Right. They could put 4D... Go ahead.
Yep. They could have a rotation of 7 guys. And when they got to 3rd down and long, they put in almost all speed guys. But the combination of what they had up front And their linebackers, man, they were physical in the secondary. They realized you had to bump these guys off the line of scrimmage. So collectively, the front end tied up with the back end, and that's what led to the victory.
And you don't see hints of that with this Jacksonville team?
No, I absolutely do see hints of that because of the point that I'm making is a lot of people are drawing the Tom Coughlin comparison. I think Chris Carter could be the president of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Their game plan is going to be the same. It's about the guys. It's about whether it's Justin Tucker, Calais Campbell.
The biggest difference is when you have your voice in the room, you have proof. Tom Coughlin, I will listen to him on anything football, and especially how do you beat the Patriots. Doug Marrone said it. All these people out here giving advice on how to beat the Patriots, don't nobody know better than Tom Coughlin. So you can believe Tom Coughlin. He got Calais Campbell. He got A.J. Bouye. All these people came with Tom Coughlin. Doug Marrone's physical style, it matches Tom Coughlin. If you think Doug Marrone, man, he's a good football coach. If you're not taking advantage of the asset in Tom Coughlin, you are naive. Tom Coughlin is playing a bigger role in this game than the other two victories in the playoffs.
New topic, NFC Championship game time. Philly hosting the Vikings. Shockingly, the gift shops in both Philly and Minnesota have yet to sell out their Nick Foles and Case Keenum merchandise. But the jerseys that just say the word defense on the back of them are going like hotcakes. Nick Foles, Case Keenum, and two incredible defenses. CC, I ask you, what do you think the Eagles need to do to pull off the upset against Minnesota?
There'll be a lot of pressure on Nick Foles. It's so easy. You watch a lot of shows, people talk about Nick Foles, what he's got to do. But if the Eagles' defense does not play great, I don't see how the Eagles are going to win. And if Nick Foles happens to not play exceptional football, if the Eagles' defense still plays well, they still have a chance to win the game. I mean, you have to go back to the Saints game. People get consumed with the end of the game, Stephon Diggs. But if you watch that game, the interior of the defensive line, I mean, Cameron Jordan dominated the Vikings. The Vikings have some issues at their right tackle. So for me, looking at the defensive front, I think one of the matchups in the game is the defensive front of the Philadelphia Eagles. Jim Schwartz, he loves to have a rotation. They're the only team in the NFL to have 7 guys that have played over 400 snaps, and they're led by Fletcher Cox. Now, Fletcher Cox, last week, he only played 58% of the snaps during the regular season. But he decided, listen, I am the guy. I'm getting ready to lead this defense. So he played 57 of the 63 snaps in the Atlanta game. And he dominated that football game. I know it's not sexy. People don't like to look at it. But if the Eagles are successful, regardless of what Nick Foles decides to do or not do, that defensive line, their defensive front, they can cause some chaos. Case Keenum, a little bit of a gambler, scrambles with the football. Short, has poor vision. Turnovers could lead to victory for the Eagles, led by that defensive front.
So what you said there I think is really interesting. You can envision a scenario where Nick Foles doesn't play great, but the Eagles still win. You can't envision a scenario where the defense doesn't play great, but the Eagles still win.
There's no chance for them to win.
For the Eagles to win.
They don't have enough firepower on their offense. They don't generate enough big plays. So I don't see that.
Well, and just to amplify that point, when we talk about what a tough matchup the Vikings defense is for the Eagles offense, we've talked about how the Vikings are first or second in almost every statistical category. They're first this year in third downs, right? Which is where the Eagles offense has made hay. But I want to expand on that. They have the best third down defense in 15 years in the NFL. They allow the opposing team to convert less than 25% of their third downs. The best any team's done since 2002. I believe it was the 2002 Bucs, but I'm not certain. But certainly in the last 15 years. So that is what Philadelphia is up against from an offensive perspective, which is why, to your point, CC, if that D-line is not great, they're not going to be able to win because this is not going to be a Steelers-Jags game. This is not going to be a shootout. Like the path to victory for Philadelphia is to slow down the Eagles' offense, and unlike Minnesota, slow down Vikings offense. Pardon me. The only part of the Eagles' defense that I look at as elite is that D-line. I think they have good linebackers. I think they have a good secondary. But the part of where they have been great this year is that D-line and that rotation. I think it's really important that people understand how important the rotation is. I think back to a moment in the Rams-Titans Super Bowl where the Titans are driving the field at the end, and one of the Rams' best defensive linemen asks out of the game. And Dick Vermeil is the NFL Films. He's apoplectic. He's like, what do you do? It's 2 minutes left in the Super Bowl. And he said, Coach, I can't breathe. Coach, I can't breathe, and goes to the sideline. It is so exhausting playing D-line. The constant battling if you're rushing the quarterback. So being able to constantly rotate guys in and out, to have a fresh pass rusher consistently is such an enormous advantage that most teams don't have, because most teams just don't have enough people to do it, enough quality D linemen to do it.
What's most appetizing for this Vikings defense is that the Eagles defense is that Case Keenum has been sacked 19 times in the last 7 games. The path is there. But it sounds like from what you guys are saying, if you but if you take both quarterbacks and say they're young and inexperienced, is this just going to come down to who's got the better defense on Sunday?
It's easy to say it's going to come down to the best defense, but, Jenna, the quarterback's going to have to make 3 or 4 plays late in the game.
Okay.
You can't hide them, all right? Neither one of them are going to be able to run the ball in a dominant fashion. They are going to have to drop back, make a read, and they're going to have to make some tight throws into tight coverage. It's not as sexy, our offensive line, defensive line. They're going to rush the passer, but these guys, you won't be able to avoid the spotlight. They will not be able to hide them on the football field on Sunday because they need explosive plays. And if not the explosive plays, who turns the ball over? Because that's big plays for the opposition.
Well, and that is where, if you're rooting for the Eagles, if you're from Philly, if you bet the Eagles, whatever it is, that's the concerning point. Nick Foles has 8 fumbles in 7 games. Nick Foles has fumbled the ball. The first game he ever played this year, he took a kneel down. That was all he did. Came in, take a knee, that's it. In the 7 other games where he's played, that he's actually thrown a pass, he has put the ball on the ground in every single game he's played in. So when you are talking about a team that's going to struggle to score already, if Foles turns the ball over, if the Vikings pass rush gets to him and gets a strip sack, that's the type of thing I don't think the Eagles can overcome. The Philly had been loose with the ball prior to Nick Foles. They turned the ball over in every game this year except for 3 instances. So if there's 17 games played, 14 games they've had a turnover. But early in the year, the offense was so high-powered that you could overcome that. You can overcome those types of miscues. Right now, I don't feel that way. They have to play a clean football game, which, by the way, they weren't able to do against Atlanta. They had early turnovers against Atlanta. They were just able to overcome it because the defense was so good.
And when you say that these quarterbacks have to at least make 3, 4, 5 good, solid plays and put points on the board, I feel like that has to come early for Nick Foles because he needs some confidence early on. And this Eagles team needs an offensive jolt right off the bat, don't you think?
It becomes very important. I mean, confidence begets confidence. And you'll hear the announcers say it's important to get off to a good start. But when you don't have experience, see, Tom Brady, like the Super Bowl last year, he can get off to a bad start. You know why? Because he's got a reservoir, not a film clip. He's got a reservoir of successful clips in his mind that he has been able to come back. He's seen himself doing well. But if you watch Nick Foles last week, he was so nervous when they started this game. And if you think the nerves in the divisional game or something, wait till he gets to the NFC Championship game. Now, Case Keenum, he showed more composure than Nick Foles did. I think one of the things that separates these two quarterbacks is if we're going to talk about the defenses, if we're going to talk about turnovers and talk over the rush, I believe the athleticism of Case Keenum gives him a huge advantage because he can get out of more trouble than Nick Foles can, but does getting out of trouble and scrambling cause him to turn the football over. That's something that I'll be watching in Sunday's contest.
And that's also something that Case was much better at the first half of the year than the second half of the year. First half of the year, weeks 1 through 9, Case had the best sack percentage against in the league. He was only sacked on 1.6% of his dropbacks, best in the league. And a lot of that was because he was escaping. Since then, it's up to 8%. So that's partially because the offensive line hasn't been as good, partially because that escapability hasn't been quite to the elite level it was early in the year. And no team in football this year has pressured the quarterback more per game than Philly. Like, this is, you said yesterday off the air, you're like, the biggest key to this game from an Eagles perspective is something we haven't talked about much yet. We're going to get into it tomorrow. You didn't tell me what it was. I imagine it's that D-line against the the Vikings offensive line.
Absolutely.
That is I don't think the Eagles have a lot of paths to victory. That's the one. The Eagles, the D-line dominating the Vikings O-line.
And watching them struggle offensively, and especially the right tackle, against New Orleans, whose line is not nearly as good and deep as Philadelphia.
Welcome back here on First Things First. We're joined by former NBA General Manager Billy King. What's up, Billy?
Not too much. How are you guys doing?
We are great. Lots of basketball news and notes and drama swirling around, so we're glad you're here to help break it down for all of us. Billy, if I told you there was an NBA team that had lost 9 of their last 12 games, that had an aging roster, that was ranked 28th defensively and had a ton of lineup questions, would you bet on that team to win the NBA title? Oh, you don't bet? I get that. Much respect. Much respect. Would you guess that team would go to the NBA Finals? Come on, CC. That team is the Cleveland Cavs, and that sentiment is quietly being expressed by a few of the players on that team. According to multiple reports, several prominent players are doubting the Cavs' title chances this season. Billy King, is this the beginning of the end of LeBron in Cleveland?
Before you answer that, as far as the Jenna and her read there, Jenna this weekend placed her first wager.
Oh, boy.
All right, so what she really wanted to ask you is, if you were a betting person, which she's not, but she dabbled in it, would you be betting on LeBron to stay in Cleveland, or is this just the normal kind of precursor
Better
to a
said than I
breakup?
could. As good as anyone could say it. Better than I could.
I think it's the normal in Cleveland. I think you got to remember, LeBron missed all of training camp, and that's when they struggled out of the gate. Now they get Isaiah Thomas back. He's played 5 games, and they struggle. Defensively, they're not going to be a great defensive team. They're going to be a team that's got to score the basketball. But I would not bet against LeBron. Every time LeBron gets out there, people say he's getting old. I don't know if Miami can get back to the finals. He keeps getting there. I think this team, you have veteran guys. They know the long road. They know how long it's going to take to get to the finals, how long the playoffs take. And they start playing basketball when you get late January, starting February, because they understand it. They don't need to get the number 1 seed as they proved last year. They just got to get in the playoff with home court advantage and be healthy.
I think with the Cavs, they have 8 new players. Would you be concerned that there's only a handful of guys that have done that with LeBron? Like, they've added some other names that, with these reports coming to reporters, you've been around teams long enough as a player and manager to understand that some of this, there's always some truth. But how much faith I have faith in LeBron. Nick, stop. You got faith in LeBron. What's wrong with the back end of this roster not having faith in LeBron?
Well, like you said, once new guys, they start talking because they don't understand the situation, they don't understand LeBron. So they talk a little bit more. They may chirp to their friends. They may chirp to the media, and that's how a lot of this stuff gets out. The J.R. Smiths, the Shumperts, those guys, they understand what it takes to get to the final. They've been there. So those guys, you may find those guys be moved on. You may see them move a couple guys, cut some guys, add some veterans, because what happens in this season, veteran guys get bought out because they start looking, I don't like the roster I'm on. Let's see, where can I go? Yeah. And that's when players start recruiting guys. Hey, come here, come play for us. We can get you bought out. So I think, it's too early. I want to see Isaiah Thomas play with them. Defensively, they're atrocious. I understand that. But I think offensively, they're pretty good. And I think when you get in the playoffs, teams focus in a little more. So they've got to be healthy going into the playoffs.
It is. I don't want to say it's easy to improve your defense in the playoffs. Not dramatically, not overhaul it. But it's damn near impossible to improve your offense in the playoffs. Like, your offense typically is what it's going to be, and it's going to struggle a little bit more because other teams...
And you have to play more half court.
More half court. Other teams are more locked in. You're going to get fewer easy buckets. The Cavs' offense has been the constant. And you mentioned they're 28th in defense. That actually means they moved up a ranking. Because they were 29th at the beginning of the week.
I thought they were 30th.
Yeah, and so Sacramento Kings, the only team that was beneath them beginning of the week. Last year, from the All-Star game to the end of the regular season, they were 29th in defense. Then come the playoffs, they were 3rd in defense. Now, that obviously was not to beat Golden State, by the way. Bless you. This year, they're 28th now in defense. We'll see if it gets better. But I do want the audience to do something of a thought exercise. What if right before the season we found out Kyrie Irving was, by the way, never traded, none of that came up, tore up his knee and was done for the year? Would you say the Cavs are okay if they're in 3rd in the East, close to the All-Star break?
Yeah.
That's a sin. Because I know they got stuff for Kyrie Irving, right, but it's not paying dividends yet. One's the Nets pick. That's obviously not paying dividends. One's Jay Crowder. He's been terrible. And the other's Isaiah Thomas, who just started playing. Like, they lost their second-best player and have not gotten any return from it. So, of course, there's going to be some tumultuous nature of this part of the season, at least in my eyes.
Well, I agree. And that's the thing, but it's a great story to talk about. I think right now everybody's looking, when they went on their run, had the great run, people are, they're back. Now they struggle because Isaiah's back. It is very difficult when players miss training camp. The one thing, Boston had, I think, 11 new players, but they all were in training camp. So they will practice that whole 27 days, get themselves right. Cleveland, LeBron wasn't there. And also, you take your best player, missed training camp. Now he comes back. The first month of the season was training camp for him. Now this is training camp for Isaiah Thomas. They're trying to figure out, how does he play? How does he want to have the basketball? So I'm not worried about them right now because I think they have LeBron. And now these other guys, and you got guys like Korver, they're older. So they understand it's a long haul. And so as they get going, when the playoffs start, that's when they'll start focus. Once these games get on national TV, later after the All-Star break, then guys realize the big games, they start playing.
You said you're not concerned about IT. You believe that over a course of maybe 15, 20 games that he'll get back. Do you have more concern for Kevin Love?
Well, that's always been the concern for Kevin Love. I just think that Kevin really has never really fit with them because when he was in Minnesota, he had the basketball all the time. He could pick and pop. He can do his thing. Here, he's only getting a certain amount of touches. You're number one receiver. You want the ball thrown to you a lot so you can get your timing.
Yeah, it would help.
And in basketball, when Kevin Love in Minnesota, he knew if he missed his first 5, he was getting 5 more quickly.
Right. When they won 18 out of 19. Kevin Love was playing the best basketball that we had saw.
Right before Isaiah came back.
Does that concern you? Because we thought he had finally fit in. But then they bring back another superstar and trying to acclimate him now. I see Kevin Love's productivity has gone down in the process.
I think that's Kevin's personality. He's like, okay, we got to get Isaiah. I'm just going to stand back and wait and figure it out. Rather than say, look, I need my shots. I think he's a good team player, and I'm not going to cause any waves because he is not one of the main guys. But I do think they got to figure out how to get him involved with the offense. I think run pick and roll with Isaiah and Kevin Love because he can pick and pop. Take the ball to LeBron James' hands. That's the one thing that LeBron has not done is taking the basketball out of his hands and let other guys handle it and maybe work off the basketball a little bit. That's going to be on the coach now, how to figure out how to incorporate all these pieces within the offense.
That's the question I was going to ask you. One of the things that these two guys talk about a lot is how do you see this starting lineup looking in the next, say Isaiah's back in it? Who are the pieces that make this work and work well? Because I don't think they even know yet what their lineup is going to look like.
Like, I think Kevin Love's got to play the 5 and just put him at the 5, let him take advantages of the mismatches. They may be small, but let him take advantage of those mismatches and they got to go smaller and be more athletic because the problem when they're bigger, they're not as athletic as other teams. So I think you got to put Kevin Love and play him more at 5 and take advantage of mismatches there. They've got to move their lineup. The piece I'm not sure that really fits for them is Tristan Thompson.
I was going to ask you that. And do you see him on this team after the trade deadline?
I don't think so. If they can get something for him to help them, I don't think so because, Tristan's a great rebounder, defender, but I think he doesn't space the floor for them enough. Mm-hmm. And I think offensively, even when they penetrate and give it to him, he's not as good a finisher as them.
Tristan hasn't gotten better. Listen, people gave the Cavs a hard time because after that first finals run, they gave Tristan $70 million. And then the cap exploded and that contract didn't look so bad because you anticipated, okay, this guy's a good defender. He can switch. He's a great offensive rebounder. Mm-hmm. His offensive game will develop. Hasn't developed at all. Yeah. He is the exact same guy he was 3 years ago. And for a guy his age, top 5 pick of a draft, that's not positive. Now, what they trade him for, what they get for him, we'll see. But one thing we do know, the Cavs have gotten something at the deadline. They got Shump, JR, and Mozgov 3 years ago. They got Channing 2 years ago and fired their coach. Last year, they got Kyle Korver. They've always made some move at the deadline. And this year, they have the extra asset of that Nets pick if they want to include that in a major, major deal.
And that's why I think Tristan Thompson's probably the piece you can move. Because if you look at a lot of these teams, their 4 guys are guys that can pick and pop. If you look at Boston, they've got guys that can stand out and shoot. You look at Philadelphia. So they've got to get somebody that can space the floor offensively. They're not going to be a great defense team, but they got to get better offensively and get better spacing.
Tristan hadn't gotten better since he hooked up with the Kardashians.
I knew you were going to go there.
He might have leaked it, too, because they leaked some stuff.
Jeff Van Gundy says you're Kardashian shaming and should be ashamed of yourself, CeCe.
And finally, you remember this story. Isaiah Thomas was going to get a video tribute in Boston earlier this month, but he was resting that night and asked to wait till next time. No problem. What's the big deal? Well, here's the big deal. The next time happens to be the night Paul Pierce is having his jersey retired, and Pierce is not interested in sharing the spotlight. Now, Pierce is adding insult to injury. Pierce says the only reason the Celtics were even having a tribute for Isaiah was because they felt bad about trading him. It was a guilt move, he says. Nick, you got a problem with how Pierce is handling all this?
Because now they're not going to play the tribute video to IT anymore.
Right.
But Paul Pierce had according to Paul Pierce, a 40-minute phone call with Danny Ainge about this. Man, when's the last time I was on the phone for 40 minutes about anything? I can't remember. A 40-minute phone call in which Ainge did, again, according to Paul Pierce, said, listen, Paul, if it's really that big of a deal, we won't do the video.
And he said?
And Paul said, okay, good, don't do the video. Are you out of your mind? Now, Isaiah Thomas, since he tweeted, I'd like to thank the Celtics for their gracious offer to play a video tribute on February 11th, celebrating my 3 years in Boston. But since it appears this has caused some controversy with Paul Pierce's night, I'd ask the Celtics to instead focus all their attention on number 34's career. This is one of the most insanely petty things I've ever seen a future Hall of Famer do, and what Paul Pierce is doing. It's 90 seconds for Isaiah Thomas. The reason they didn't play it the first time wasn't just he wasn't playing. IT's family wasn't there.
Right.
I can't imagine why Paul Pierce is such an issue with it, but now I guess he's getting what he wanted.
Also, not only Paul Pierce, but they asked Rondo, about the tribute to IT, and he said, wow, they're celebrating that now in Boston? So there are former Celtics that think that they've changed the standard, and I haven't been on Paul Pierce's side of this thing, but I got to say the truth might have delivered the truth here as far as IT and Danny Ainge. I believe there is a little guilt there because you only played 3 years with a franchise. I mean, what type of celebration are they going to really like? I mean, what did you do that was so celebratory that they should have something like this, something that they typically don't have? They didn't have anything for Rondo.
They gave Jay Crowder a video. Jay Crowder got a video.
Because he was part of the trade. They knew what they were trying to do. If Jay Crowder wasn't part of the trade, do you think they would have had a video?
What? No.
So that's guilt.
Okay.
So the truth did drop a truth.
Okay, but first of all, Paul Pierce's jersey is being retired after the game. This does not take away from his night at all. In fact, it adds
But
to
you
the
take
night.
advantage of the crowd that's there. It's not only after the game, all right? It's before the game and everything. No, I think that they could still be done in the same time.
Yeah.
But if the organization has changed the way they're honoring players, that should be recognized. And Rondo and Paul Pierce, who have great careers in Boston, they think that it's different. I've never played in Boston. I have had tributes done to me. So I have to listen to what they're saying. And Paul Pierce brings up a great point that it's not his fault. This is the Celtic and Danny Ainge's fault. They the one traded him.
Listen, fine. But let's all... Isaiah Thomas last year was a cult hero in that town. Boston fans were chanting MVP for this guy from the All-Star break on. He had the best individual season any Celtic has had since Kevin Garnett in that uniform. The highest MVP finish any Celtic has had since Larry Bird, other than 1 year of Kevin Garnett. Isaiah last year...
And after doing all that, you know what they did, Nick?
They traded
told him you can work elsewhere.
Right.
Okay.
They should have just done it the first time around. I know his family and everything wasn't there, but they should have just done it.
You can't do that, Jenna. I disagree with that because if his wife and kids can't be there.
But now he doesn't get anything.
Well, so what is he missing?
Right. Well, he could have had something, and now he's not getting
But his family,
anything.
it means more to the family than it does to the player. And Isaiah's moved on.
He requested that they wait. That's why they didn't do it. He said, hey, I'm not playing, my family's not coming, can you wait? The Celtics said, yeah, of course. What could possibly be the problem? Little did they know the truth. Paul Pierce thinks that that's going to be declared Paul Pierce Day in Boston, that they're going to announce the Paul Pierce coming statue, that they're going to retire. The whole thing is an absurdity.
And the big loser in all this that I don't think anyone is talking about is the poor guy that edited the video tribute. Like, what about that guy? He must have spent so many hours. Now what do you do with the tribute? We can discuss that later, maybe in a commercial break or never. Moving on, it has been a rough couple of weeks for the NBA. Lately, box scores have looked like this. Buckets made, rebounds grabbed, and punches thrown. FYI, rumor has it Ron Artest was padding that last stat his whole career. Last night in the Magic T-Wolves game, Aaron Aflalo took a huge swing at Nemanja Bjelica, and both players were subsequently tossed from the game. Another night, another fight. Here's Bjelica telling his side of the story.
First of all, I don't want to feel like I'm a victim here. I mean, that's everything part of the game. But he took a swing on me, and I was just trying, to protect myself first of all, and to help him. I mean, to calm him down, because he was wild. I don't know what's wrong with that guy, but and at that point, I mean, if you attack me like that, I just have to protect myself or my family.
All right, CC, you brought this up a couple days ago and have continued to it. Does the NBA have some sort of fighting problem right now?
Well, I don't. Just reacting to the players, the temperament of the players is at a different level than I've seen. Now, I grew up watching the NBA in the 80s and the 90s. It was far more physical, and I mean, there's some people that really, really got hurt. But I'm talking about with this group that we see. Like what we've seen the last 10 years, this group right now is the most volatile, the most confrontational. The only time that there's really any type of peace at the NBA game is before they snap it off, they put some powder on them, they wipe their shoes off, and they shake hands with each other. After that, it's nothing but a bunch of complaining, a bunch of mean staring, a bunch of just stuff that I'm not used to seeing with the NBA. Like, guys have always complained about fouls. But now, seeing what it spews over to last night in the Orlando game. Like, it's not necessary. If I'm a fan, I don't want to see guys fighting. Like, there was no need for them to be fighting. One guy was going to the hole. He might have hit him with a little forearm, but to take that type of punch at a guy, you could really hurt someone.
That was a real swing. That was a real swing of follow through. Go ahead, Jenna.
Is there anything to be said, or is there any sort of correlation to be made between guys who've seemingly been so frustrated with refs this season and taking it out on each other?
Well, that's almost the conclusion I would draw. I do think there's a correlation to what's going on with the officials. So the officials and the players are meeting at the All-Star break to try to have some type of peace treaty, because the players, the superstars in this league as a whole, have never been more frustrated with the referees, not in my memory. And what I do think we are seeing in the league is right now, the toughest thing a referee can do to a player is give him a technical foul or a flagrant foul. The referees are much more liberal with technicals given out for bad conduct towards them than bad conduct towards other players. And what you're seeing is, in my eyes, from a guy that watches League Pass every night, is referees not taking control of games early to try to diffuse some of these things, which would be one thing if they weren't simultaneously one technical throwing guys out for saying sideways things to them. Like, the referees are protecting themselves and their own sensibilities a hell of a lot better than they're protecting the players. Now, that was not the case last night. Last night, Aflalo just seemed to snap. Like, he just lost it. I mean, that was a very dangerous punch he threw. But as far as systemically the bigger issue, yes, I think the overall level of officiating does have something to do with it.
And this fight comes one day after Martin Luther King Day, where all these games are highlighted. You got 20 technicals. You got 5 ejections. And I brought it up in the meeting yesterday, and let alone I'm watching League Pass last night, and this breaks out. So for me, as a fan, as a consumer of their product, there is a problem. Because I do not tune into NBA League Pass to watch UFC. That's not what I'm interested in.
Here's the thing, though, CC. Every other sport allows a level of fighting. And so you can say that.
Where are they fighting in the NFL?
Man, we see not that type of punching, but we see guys slap someone's face mask or do like an open-handed thing to the helmet and get a 15-yard penalty once every other game.
Yeah, and 2 of those get you thrown out of the game.
Right.
And you do have protection.
Correct. Agree. But there is.
But that's not fighting.
Well,
that's not fighting.
That's the level of fighting most.
That's a level of fighting I ain't heard of.
Well, most NBA fights don't get to this level. Most NBA fights get to about the level.
It gets to what? They're not fighters, though.
Well, so hold on. So baseball, fighting's part of the sport. Like, we just accept it. Like, you throw at me, we're going to clear benches, we're going to clear dugouts, we're going to do the whole thing. Hockey, obviously, a huge part of it. NASCAR, we see fighting on pit row. Like
UFC?
Well, obviously. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, but the boxing and UFC, yes, because it's part and parcel with the sport. But extracurricular fighting is a part of every sport, and it used to be a part of the NBA. The NBA legislated it out most notably after the Malice in the Palace, but they were starting to do it before that with the rule about guys coming off the bench. These guys also have been criticized for the AAU culture, everyone being buddy-buddy. The NBA's soft now. Now, maybe it's
These are two international players.
What? Well, that's fine, Cece. Again, I don't think we're just talking about last night, right? We're not just talking about last night, are we?
No, we're talking about the totality of it. Yes, we're talking about the totality of it.
So, this is, I don't know what the NBA does about it, but I also know that, like, you seem more bothered by fighting in sports than I think most sports fans are.
Well, it affects the product, all right? It does not enhance the product. It's not as if you leave an NBA game with all these technicals or someone's thrown out of the game. It enhances. It's about skill. You know, that's what basketball is about. It's not about fighting. Fighting has nothing to do with it. Now, sometimes do you have to defend yourself in sports? Yes. But it's a bad look for the NBA that is gaining traction in as far as popularity. That's my concern, and it's a sport that I love. And if I'm not comfortable with it, I'm going to say it, and that's where I am.
You don't have an issue with fighting in sports.
I just think I think when you got grown men that are playing contact sports, there's going to be a level of this. Now,
yeah. Also, we're talking about professional grown men being paid a lot of money. You know what? To have some type of self-control. Wow, that's what they should have.
And I want to make this clear. I did have an issue with what Aaron Aflalo did last night. He really could have hurt him. That could have been a devastating.
And he really tried to hurt him.
But that was a much more dramatic swing than we almost ever see in NBA games. Like the Serge Ibaka-James Johnson thing from last week was noteworthy because there was an actual punch thrown.
Yeah, we actually had a posse go from one locker room into another locker room, Nick, and then we get one guy throw a haymaker at another guy. Yeah, that's what I'm consuming. All right, NBA League Pass. That's what I bought that for. That's what I purchased it for.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.